Han Li, who was at the mid-Nascent Soul stage, with the help of Little Jigong, found the whereabouts of the profound ice flower. Accompanied by Bai Yaoyi, Han Li successfully arrived at the flower's location, and picked it successfully. So, Han Li refined the medicine alone in the ice phoenix, while Bai Yaoyi wandered around nearby. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. But, at this moment, Bai Yaoyi seemed to be heavily injured. Being pursued by 2 transformed demonic beasts, she fled back to the sky above the ice phoenix. Upon seeing the ice phoenix, she immediately let out a long sigh of relief. Her tense spirit relaxed, and she plunged head first down towards the ice phoenix, disappearing into the mist without a trace. And the 2 streaks of light arrived above the ice phoenix the next moment. A man and a woman could be faintly seen flashing within the light. The 2 beasts saw what was in the mist below, the 6-winged frost centipedes and gold-devouring beetles, and were both stunned. They hesitated slightly. Gold-devouring beetles, they're worldly creatures. How can there still be so many of these bugs in the world? The man was no longer shrouded by the green light, revealing a bizarre appearance, a head of messy green hair, 2 large yellow eyes the size of straw hats, and a large mouth that almost stretched to the ends of his cheeks, filled with fine, sharp teeth. It was impossible to tell what kind of beast he had transformed from. Following his cry of surprise, those falling gold-devouring beetles once again buzzed and flew up with fluttering wings. At the same time, the green leaves covering their bodies began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye, as they were devoured mouthful by the gold-devouring beetles. The man's expression turned even uglier, but just then, a red light flashed above the gold-devouring beetles. The woman, transformed from a snake demon, appeared out of the void. She opened her mouth and spat out a hazy green object, which transformed into a green wooden bowl, shining down from above. The green wooden bowl expanded wildly, growing several times larger. At the same time, threads of light sprayed out from within, purify into a huge light barrier below, enveloping all the gold-devouring beetles underneath. And after the golden beetles broke free from the green light, they desperately rammed this light curtain, but to no avail. It actually trapped them completely for the moment. At this moment, the snake demon twisted her hand, and said coldly to the man, "What are you afraid of? Did you really think that these are the mature ones from ancient times? As long as they aren't truly mature, there are plenty of ways to kill them." As if to prove her own words, the woman suddenly pointed, flicking her slender finger downwards. Instantly, a piercing sound tore through the air, producing a blinding, nail-sized red glow. It shot out in a flash, and entered the greenish light barrier, slicing through one of the gold-devouring beetles. That gold-devouring beetle, as tough as diamond, was instantly and silently split in 2. It had been directly cleaved into 2 pieces by the red glow. The red glow then paused, revealing its true form. It was a crimson snake scale, about an inch long, with exceptionally sharp edges. Seeing this, not only did the man's expression relax, but the woman herself revealed a sinister smile, as she formed a hand seal. Immediately, a series of feft sounds were heard, as out of thin air, from her body, shot over 100 identical snake scales. It seemed this snake demon intended to ignore for now those 6-winged creatures tangled with her fire snakes, and instead wipe out these gold-devouring beetles in one go. But just at that moment, from the blue mist beneath the ice phoenix, a chillingly cold snort was suddenly heard, followed by a clap of thunder from within. Then, about 20 jong opposite the snake demon, a fluorescent light flashed, and a figure materialized. The snake demon was quite alert. She immediately formed a hand seal. With a vicious thought, she immediately urged it on. The snake scales that appeared before her changed direction, and in an instant, they tore through the void to appear before the figure. They were about to riddle the figure with 1,000 holes, freezing it through. That person let out a soft chuckle. A palm calmly flipped over. Instantly, a small, sparkling, fluorescent shield appeared before him. It shook lightly, and a mirror-like silver barrier bizarrely emerged. An unbelievable scene occurred. The dense red glow struck the silver barrier, immediately erupting in a blinding fluorescent light. These red glows, within the fluorescent light, were all deflected. Their directions changed. Not a single one managed to freeze through. The woman transformed from the snake demon was startled, but the man beside her got a fierce look on his face. With a flick of his sleeves, waves of emerald green poison instantly billowed forward, and if one looked closely, one could see that, within this poison, inconspicuous green threads were glinting. These were all from this demon's thousands of years of arduous cultivation. magical poisonous needles condensed from various toxic substances. Even a late-stage Nascent Soul cultivator, if struck by these needles and failed to neutralize the poison in time, would dissolve into poisonous water in a short while. Its poison was truly unparalleled. But behind the silver barrier, the man likewise flicked his sleeve robe, and a small crimson cauldron shot out with force. In a flash, the cauldron appeared outside the silver barrier. Then, with a clear ring, its lid opened on its own as its body rapidly expanded. Countless crimson fireballs shot out from within. Each one was only the size of a fist. They then condensed and transformed, actually turning into hundreds of crimson fire birds. From their mouths came a sound like a roaring furnace, as they flew directly towards the billowing, emerald-green poison. As a result, the moment the two made contact, whether it was the poison or the toxic needles within, they were engulfed by the crimson flames from the oppressive fire. In a flash, they were reduced to a wisp of smoke, instantly proving to be no match. This figure was, of course, Han Li, and this small crimson brazier was the spirit-attuned brazier he had acquired on Kunwu Mountain. The thousands of fire crows controlled by this brazier were a potent weapon against evil arts. Now, upon encountering them, their power was immediately evident. A golden light flashed in Han Li's eyes, and he was greatly pleased. With a gentle shake of his embroidered sleeve, a ball of three-colored light silently slid into his hand. That swarm of fire, the sea of flames transformed by the fire crows, rushed towards the opponent. The wind and thunder wings on Han Li's back suddenly flashed. He transformed into a silver arc on the spot, and vanished without a trace. Seeing his poisonous creatures being forced back, the man was both shocked and enraged. Seeing this new development, his heart sank again. He hastily released his spiritual sense. At the same time, he formed a hand seal, and a green silk web shot out from his body. It resembled a spider's web, centering on himself, enveloping the area of several meters around him. And just then, with a clap of thunder, Han Li appeared a few meters behind the man, materializing in an instant. As a result, the green web, under the attack, descended with lightning speed. With a loud boom, a golden lightning net materialized around Han Li's body. It shot back towards the green web. The moment the green web made contact, it was annihilated. The man's face paled in fright. A spiritual light immediately flickered around his body as he prepared to flee. Just then, a three-colored flame shot towards him mercilessly. The man's protective spiritual light flared brightly. He just wanted to use this to temporarily block the female's fire attack, to have time to escape. But after a loud boom, a three-colored halo of light erupted between them. The radiant halo pulsed once, trapping the man's figure within it. A blood-curdling scream immediately followed. Inside the halo, the man was engulfed by three-colored flames, instantly turning into a puff of green smoke and vanishing without a trace. The power of the three-leaf fan is something not even a Yanchi-forked demon beast would dare to face head-on, let alone a mere level 8 demon beast. This scene made the one who was too late to help, the female snake demon, break out in a cold sweat, although her powers were slightly greater than the man's, since Han Li could, with a mere wave of his hand, annihilate her companion. Dealing with her naturally wouldn't take much effort either. Without a second thought, she erupted in a brilliant red light. With a bang, she self-destructed, transforming into dozens of crimson fire snakes that shot out and fled in all directions. Han Li was startled for a moment, but then a cold sneer appeared on his lips. He frantically channeled spiritual power into his eyes, and after a piercing blue light erupted from his pupils and scanned the area, he locked onto one of the fire snakes. The wind and thunder wings on his back trembled, and he vanished into thin air amidst a clap of thunder. A fluorescent light flashed repeatedly. After a few thunder jumps, Han Li's figure appeared right above the fire snake. His gaze was ice-cold as he looked down at the demon snake. This crimson fire snake raised its head and saw the piercing glare, and a look of terror flashed in its eyes. Without another word, it opened its huge mouth wide, and suddenly, a ball of red light enveloping a thumb-sized, round bead shot out from its mouth, heading straight for Han Li in a desperate attack. This was precisely the female fire snake's fire tribute demon core, cultivated for who knows how many years. Han Li pursed his lips. A faint smile flashed across his face. With one hand, he made a gentle grasping motion in the air towards the orb. With a soft grunt, a stream of purple flame shot out from his hand, immediately transforming into a purple fiery hand. It instantly seized the orb. A series of crackling sounds erupted from within the large hand. Red light and purple flames intertwined and flickered for a moment. Then all fell silent. Below, the fire snake's body trembled. The raging flames on its body suddenly dimmed. The snake, in great terror, was about to use its technique again, to escape and save its life. But at that moment, a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. He formed a seal with his hands. The purple fiery hand expanded several times in size, and swooped down to grab it. Before the fire snake could even dart away, it felt a chill run through its entire body. Its whole midsection was suddenly bound by something, rendering it immobile. Its heart sank. It was then that it realized, before the purple hand had even reached it, it had already been enveloped by wisps of purple, chilly air, wrapping around it layer by layer. This cold energy, of course, couldn't truly restrain a creature that was nearly a level 9 demon beast like itself. But in that moment of delay, the purple hand was already descending upon it. The beast, with no other choice, desperately spat out one last ball of fire, mixed with its own essence blood. But this only caused the flames on the purple hand to flicker slightly, before it was seized by the large hand. At its 7-inch spot, a layer of purple ice began to spread out. At that moment, the last flicker of flame on its body was instantly extinguished, and it was frozen into a huge block of ice, shimmering with a purple light under the sun. It was a strangely beautiful sight. Only then did the large purple hand vanish into thin air. In midair, the figure in the embroidered robe shook his sleeve, and a dozen or so golden lights shot out, circling the purple ice block a few times. As the golden lights flashed, the giant soldier, along with the fire snake inside, shattered into dozens of pieces. A streak of green light shot out, but a well-prepared Han Li surrounded the green light. Golden arcs shot out from the dozen or so flying swords simultaneously, forming a golden net. It instantly trapped the green light within. The golden light immediately contracted, forming a golden sphere, trapping the green light inside. Han Li flicked his hand. A black jade bottle was cast out. A glow erupted from the mouth of the bottle. The golden sphere was sucked into it. Han Li calmly put it away. Within the icy blue mist, a fluorescent light flickered. Bai Yaoyi flew out from below. She looked at the scene before her, a look of shock appearing on her face. You have to understand, from the moment she hid below to when she flew back out, only a few moments had passed. The two form-transforming demonic beasts had already been easily slain by Han Li. She knew very well how formidable these two demonic beasts were. Although they were only level 8 demonic beasts, each one was actually no weaker than a cultivator at the mid-Nascent Soul stage. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ended up in such a sorry state, being chased all this way. She had long known that Han Li possessed great powers, but for him to kill the two beasts with such ease still left her utterly shocked. Just as Bai Yaoyi was in a daze, Han Li recalled all the centipedes and the gold-devouring beetles. He floated down gracefully from midair. Fellow Taoist Bai, you seem to be badly poisoned. Han Li glanced at her face, his brow furrowing. I also didn't expect the beast's poison to be so potent. It could actually penetrate my protective aura. Fortunately, I have already taken 100 herbs pill. I just need to sit and meditate for half a day to expel this poison. Bai Yaoyi's complexion returned to normal, as she said gently, Han, also, having just finished my alchemy, I was thinking that if it had been a moment sooner, it's hard to say whether I could have intervened. Han Li smiled faintly and said, in that case, I was really quite lucky. Bai Yaoyi smiled sweetly. However, Fairy Bai, how did you run into these two shape-shifting beasts? Wasn't it said that around North Ming Island, there usually aren't any high-level beasts? Han Li glanced around and asked curiously, it's a long story. This is not the place to talk. We should leave quickly. I can explain the details to you, fellow Taoist, on the way. Bai Yaoyi suddenly remembered something. Her expression changed drastically. What? There are other beasts. How many? Han Li narrowed his eyes. A flicker of golden light flashed through them. More than just a few. I'm afraid our minor polar palace is in big trouble this time. Bai Yaoyi gave a bitter smile. Hearing her say this, Han Li's heart sank. But on the surface, he nodded calmly and said, since you've put it that way, Fairy Bai, let's head to your palace first. However, fellow Taoist, you are severely poisoned right now. I'm afraid you can't travel immediately. Allow me to lend you a hand. In that case, I thank you, fellow Taoist, Bai Yaoyi said with delight. Afterwards, the two of them, one after the other, shot back into the blue mist below. For a moment, the area around the ice phoenix fell silent. 4 hours later, two swift, brilliant streaks of light shot out from the ice phoenix again. In the blink of an eye, with a sound of tearing through the air, they disappeared over the horizon. Half a day later, a mass of inky black dark clouds came rolling in from another direction, enveloped the entire frozen area for miles. A moment later, a long, furious howl came from within the dark clouds. The entire dark cloud churned violently. Thunder roared and lightning flashed. A gray, demonic wind suddenly gusted out of thin air. In an instant, the dark clouds vanished without a trace. Several days later, Han Li and Bai Yaoyi returned to the Lethargy Palace. Appearing before Reverend Han Li at the same time, they were back in the place, the one Han Li had visited once before, inside the great hall built from 10,000-year-old mystic ice. Junior Sister Bai, are you certain you weren't mistaken? Have they really joined forces? At this moment, Reverend Han Li's expression was grim, his brows tightly furrowed. That green-backed azure wolf is one of the ancient lords from the 10,000 Demon Valley, on par with the ancient Master Shang. How could I possibly be mistaken? Besides, the two level 8 demon beasts that were chasing me, were clearly not from the coastal region. There's no way I'm wrong about this, Bai Yaoyi said without a hint of hesitation, her expression stern. So, you're saying, the 10,000 Demon Valley and the coastal demon beasts have teamed up. It seems they are determined to succeed this time. Brother Han, thank you for helping Junior Sister Bai. But you must be tired. Please, go rest in the guest pavilion for now. Reverend Han Li's expression softened as he looked at Han Li. He then politely asked him to leave. Han Li calmly stood up and walked away, without the slightest bit of hesitation. In a couple of days, I'll introduce you to two other fellow Taoists. They are from our great Jin, both renowned rogue cultivators. Brother Han, I'm sure you'll be able to form a close bond with them, Reverend Han Li added, speaking to Han Li as he was leaving. Understood. Thank you for the trouble, fellow Taoist. Han Li nodded casually. Then, in a flash of light, he vanished from the corridor without a trace. After Qing Guang had disappeared from the main hall, revered Han Li turned to Bai Yaoyi and said solemnly, Junior Sister, send out transmission talismans. Summon all the elders remaining in the palace to come here. We must discuss this in detail. And also, immediately double the security personnel. Yes, Great Elder. Bai Yaoyi nodded. Then, with a flip of her hand, a stack of transmission talismans appeared in her palm. Han Li returned to the pavilion where she was temporarily residing. Entering the second floor, she sat down cross-legged. On the way back, Bai Yaoyi had briefly told him about the events that occurred while Han Li was refining pills. It turned out this woman, while on patrol, had discovered a group of high-level, shape-shifting demon beasts, holding a gathering. Among these demon beasts were some from the coast, as well as some from the inland. One of the leaders was actually another Deputy Valley Master from the 10,000 Demon Valley, the Greenback, Azure Wolf, along with the notoriously fierce twin-headed Black Flood Dragon from the coast. But this woman was unable to hear any specifics. Before she was discovered by these demon beasts, the woman naturally turned and fled. It's not clear whether the group of demon beasts had other important business, or if they felt that two of them were more than enough to handle her. The other demon beasts did not give chase. As a result, halfway through her escape, the woman ended up in a great battle with the two demons. In the end, she was carelessly poisoned. She could only flee to Han Li's location. Ultimately, Han Li used her corpse-blundering divine ability to slay the two demons. Now, he sat with an imposing presence, his expression calm, but in his mind, he was secretly pondering the matter and feeling unsettled. To Han Li's surprise, over the next few days, aside from security being tightened at the Lesser Polar Palace, there was none of the commotion he had imagined, and Bai Yaoyi was also nowhere to be seen. It seemed she had other important matters to attend to. Han Li was non-committal about this. For him, in his current state, unless he was being hunted down by a spirit transformation cultivator with all their might, or was trapped in some deadly land, there was almost nothing in this realm that could threaten his life. Therefore, what was once a great vortex he would have avoided at all costs, he now calmly faced without any intention of leaving. Part of the reason was indeed that he had already promised Senior Li Shang to help him break through to the spirit transformation stage. But more importantly, it was because of the secret technique for breaking through bottlenecks given by the Great Elder. Of this little Jigong, it turned out that it only contained the part that he needed to cast. To obtain the complete secret technique, he had to personally participate once. When Han Li discovered this, he felt a bit frustrated. On top of that, he had been deliberately searching for news of the solar essence fire, but there wasn't a single clue, so he was even more unwilling to leave just like that. He went to the Golden Treasure Pavilion again. Using up his remaining 2 days, Tio put all his effort into searching for information about the solar essence fire. Unfortunately, there were no clues at all. Homley wasn't surprised by this. If it could be found so easily, he would have been the one to be shocked. In the following days, Homley diligently meditated and cultivated in the guest building, not taking a single step out the door. It was as if he truly treated Little Jigong as his own private residence. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Little Jigong was completely calm and peaceful, but anyone could sense the heavy atmosphere, the kind that comes before a storm. And on this very day, Hanli's cultivation was interrupted. A visitor had finally arrived, and it was a woman, whose face looked remarkably similar to Bai Yaoyi's. For the same reason, my cultivation is at the mid-stage. But it seems I've already reached the peak of the mid-stage. It seems I have a slight edge over Bai Yaoyi. Your Excellency is Fairy Bai's older cousin. He stared at the woman before him, with his hands clasped behind his back. He was somewhat surprised. That's right. I am Bai Mingshen, an inner elder of the Little Ji Palace. I am also one of the cultivators in the palace, who practices the Feast of Extreme Cold. I have heard from fellow Taoist Hanli that besides him, there are 2 other people in your esteemed palace who cultivate the Feast of Hunger and Cold. So, you are one of them? May I ask why fellow Taoist Bai has suddenly come here to say this? What guidance do you have for me? The corner of Han Li's mouth twitched. He said, his eyes flashing. Although this woman was exceptionally beautiful, her pale, white face still sent a chill through his heart. It was clearly related to the cultivation technique she practiced. Han Li didn't dare to underestimate her. There's not much difference. I've heard that your divine abilities are comparable to a late-stage great cultivator, and the purple apex fire you cultivate is also infinitely profound. I would like to use the technique I've cultivated to spar with you and your Eye of Extreme Cold. I wonder if you would be so kind as to give me some pointers. The woman raised her hand, holding up a fair, slender finger. A cold light flashed at her fingertip, and a wisp of white ice flame appeared. This ice flame was like a faint green smoke, drifting gracefully. It was impossible to see any power in it, but Han Li, who also cultivated the extreme cold flame, was able to, through some mysterious spiritual sense, strangely perceive this wisp of white flame. His expression couldn't help but turn grim at its terrifying nature. Very well. I, Han, have long heard of the fame of your esteemed palace's 3 great cold flames. Let me experience it for myself. However, do you intend for us to spar right here? Han Li glanced at his surroundings, suddenly let out a clear laugh. It's not like we're in a real magical duel. A rare, faint smile appeared on Bai Mingshen's face. She opened her mouth, and at the flame on her fingertip, she blew a puff of cold air towards the white flame. The white ice flame grew several times larger under her breath. It swirled with a green light before transforming into a small white snake, which lunged straight at Han Li to bite him. Han Li's brows furrowed. He flicked his embroidered robe towards the surroundings. Instantly, several streaks of light of different colors shot out from within it, disappearing into the void. A layer of faint red light then appeared all around, sealing off the immediate area. He then opened his mouth, and a small ball of purple flame shot out, transforming into a small purple bird that surged towards the opposing fire snake. Under the watchful eyes of Han Li and Bai Mingshen, the white and purple glows collided. Amidst the intertwining flashes, a low rumble of thunder could be heard. In an instant, the purple bird grew enormously, and bit by bit, it swallowed the white ice flame. A moment later, the white snake was completely gone. All that remained was the even more brilliant purple firebird, circling and dancing in place, like a spirit of fire. Upon seeing this, a flicker of astonishment crossed Bai Mingshen's face. Han Li, however, calmly raised his hand and beckoned. The purple firebird turned back into a ball of purple flame and flew back. It disappeared into his sleeve without a trace. Fellow Taoist, your purple Luo extreme flame is truly extraordinary. That being the case, I can now rest assured. Brother Han, please follow me. The other 2 fellow Taoists who possess the extreme cold flame have likely already arrived at the palace. They are waiting for you at the Great Elder's residence. Bai Mingshen no longer hesitated, and stated the true purpose of this visit. So that's how it is. It seems Fairy Bai wasn't quite at ease with me. That's why he deliberately made a move to observe. Han Li smiled, unconcerned. Bai Mingshen still said nothing. She just gave a slight nod. Then, she formed a hand seal. Her body transformed into a streak of white escaping light, and shot out directly from the window. Han Li rubbed his nose, a trace of helplessness on his face. When this woman came in, she also flew in through the window, which really gave him a fright. But seeing that the woman had already left, Han Li could only transform into a streak of azure and red light, and similarly escaped from the pavilion through the window. A short while later, Han Li and this woman entered Supreme Being Hanli's great hall of 10,000-year-old mystic ice. In the hall, that giant cauldron emitting a blue ice flame was still there as before, and on a few nearby cushions sat four people cross-legged. Supreme Being Hanli was sitting with a middle-aged man in a green robe, an old man with pure white hair and a beard, and a monk in a gray robe with long eyebrows were sitting opposite, a bit further away. As Han Li and Bai Mengxian entered the great hall, the gazes of the four people immediately fell upon them, but Han Li clearly sensed that the old man and the monk only swept their gazes past Bai Mengxian's body, while their attention landed mainly on him. Naturally, Han Li wouldn't be so polite either. His spiritual sense also swept over them in return. The cultivation levels of these two were not weak. The old man was at about the same realm as himself, while the monk had a peak mid-stage cultivation base. Han Li stepped forward, giving a slight bow with clasped hands to the four of them, and calmly sat down on another cushion, at a distance that was neither too far nor too close to any of the four. Meanwhile, Bai Mengxian sat on the other side of Supreme Being Hanli. Madam Long, Master Moju, this is fellow Taoist Han. He is the fifth cultivator friend that I, Shai, have found. The elegance of Han's chilling eye. With the help of several fellow Taoists, I have spent hundreds of years painstakingly researching a method to break through the Deity Transformation bottleneck. Today, at last, the ritual can begin. Revered Han Li began by explaining this with a pleasant smile. Revered Han Li then spoke, her eyes filled with unconcealed excitement. That old woman, however, was expressionless. She gave Han Li a cold glance, but said nothing. It seemed she had a rather peculiar temper. It was the monk in the embroidered robe, who had the kind and benevolent face of a high monk, who smiled warmly at Han Li. He spoke on behalf of Taoist Han. Brother Han, like this old monk, you do not cultivate an ice attribute technique, and yet, you possess the eye of extreme cold. Is this truly the case? The monk asked in a gentle tone. I was merely fortunate enough to obtain it by a lucky chance. Han Li replied calmly, I heard that your Han's eye art was something you created yourself. The last appearance of the Din Han Yan was tens of thousands of years ago. I wonder if you would allow this old woman to witness it. The old woman said with extreme indifference, yet her voice was as pleasant as a young maiden's. This startled Han Li, and he couldn't help but glance at the old woman. Fellow Taoist Han, no need to be surprised. Madame Nong is the great elder of the Liu Kui sect. The cultivation technique she practices is somewhat special, which is why she's able to keep her voice perpetually young. At that moment, revered Han Li took the opportunity to kindly explain this to Han Li. Hearing revered Han Li's explanation, Han Li still couldn't hide his astonishment. He had certainly seen his fair share of female cultivators, but a cultivation technique specifically designed to maintain a youthful voice. This was truly the first time he had ever heard of such a thing. Seeing Han Li staring at her with such a strange expression, the old woman's white hair trembled slightly, and she let out a cold snort. What, fellow Taoist, do you have a problem with the techniques of our Liu Kui sect? Do you have any guidance for me? Not at all. I was just curious for a moment. My Han Yan hasn't been refined at all. How could I dare compare it to the extreme cold feasts of my fellow Taoists? With Han Li's current divine powers, he would naturally no longer be mistaken for a mid-Nascent Soul cultivator. But at the same time, he doesn't want to make enemies for no reason. Orphan. He laughed it off evasively. Old Ju, upon hearing what Han Li had said, felt it wouldn't be right to be overly aggressive, so he could only lower his gaze, and said nothing more. But at that moment, Bai Mengxian's lips moved slightly, as she sent a few words via voice transmission to Master Han Li. Master Han Li only heard a few sentences, and a hint of amusement instantly flashed across his brow. Then, after taking a deep look at Han Li, he gave a light cough and began to speak. All right. Lady Long and Master Moju are both friends I've known for many years, and fellow Taoist Han, with an elder from my sect, has a very deep friendship. That is why this time, I was able to ask the three of you to lend me a hand. Although according to my estimate, the chance of success is only 30%. But in my current situation, I really cannot delay any longer. I can only take the risk. Yes, fellow Taoist, although your lifespan is nearing its end, on my way here, I have already discovered many high-level demonic beasts, beginning to gather near North Nether Island. To attempt this secret technique now, the risk for you also seems a bit too great, the monk asked with apparent concern. Fellow Taoist Moju, rest assured, if I succeed in breaking through the bottleneck this time, that would naturally be for the best. I will no longer have to fear those demonic creatures. If I fail, my sect has already arranged a contingency plan. It won't be a situation where my fall leads to the entire sect being wiped out, Master Panley said with exceptional confidence. Since Master Dao has said so, this humble monk can rest assured, the gray-robed monk said with a smile. This old man has no objections either. I've long wanted to witness the true mystery of this secret text. Elder Yu similarly nodded, hearing them say this. Reverend Hanli was greatly pleased. When his gaze fell upon Hanli, Hanli said calmly, "When do we start? I have no objections whatsoever. I've been waiting for a long time." Good. Since the three of you have no objections, then follow me. Fellow Taoists, I have already prepared everything. Reverend Hanli rubbed his hands together and stood up with delight. Hanli and the other also stood up. Reverend Hanli, however, strode forward quickly, walking to a cauldron on the side. He chanted something under his breath, and with a flick of his hand, he cast a blue spell seal upon it. The giant cauldron immediately let out a series of buzzing sounds. A brilliant blue light flared, and its volume rapidly decreased. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk to the size of a fist. Hovering in midair, and on the ground beneath the cauldron, a dark hole strangely appeared. At the same time, a translucent ice staircase spiraled downwards, leading to an unknown destination. Reverend Hanli beckoned to the small cauldron with one hand, storing it in his large sleeve. He took the lead and walked down. Bai Mingxin and the middle-aged man from Qingshan followed closely behind. After Elder Yu and the gray-robed monk glanced at each other, they also followed. Hanli squinted at the entrance for a moment. After a faint, enigmatic smile appeared on his lips, he followed them down as well. Not long after entering, the originally pitch-black passage began to light up. Only then could everyone see clearly. The four walls of the passage were actually also built from profound ice, and at regular intervals, an X-sized moonstone was embedded in the wall. The stone shimmered with light, making it feel as if they were in a crystal palace. After descending for over 100 zhang, they finally reached the end of the ice stairs. Then, the passage began to level out, leading off in a specific direction. Although it was the first time for Hanli, Old Manu, and the others to walk this path, each of them was a person of vast experience. Therefore, none of them showed any signs of surprise. Instead, everyone remained perfectly composed, as if they were strolling through their own private courtyards. After walking for about the time it takes to eat a meal, the group finally emerged from the ice passage, finding themselves in an underground grand hall. This hall, however, was built from ordinary green jade, giving it an exceptionally ancient and simple appearance, as if it had existed for a great many years. However, at the far end of the hall facing Hanli's group, there wasn't a wall, but rather a massive stone gate. It was ashen white and stood a full 20-30 zhang tall. Its surface was covered in layers of runic arrays, and some strange, unknown patterns. The entire gate pulsed with multicolored spiritual light. But what surprised Hanli even more was that a group of cultivators was standing before this stone gate. There were about 16 or 17 of them, and every single one of them had a Nascent Soul cultivation base. Although most were only at the early Nascent Soul stage, such a large number was still astonishing. Among them, Bai Yaoyi and an old man with flowing white hair stood at the very front of the group. Hanli blinked, his gaze momentarily sweeping past the monk and toward Bai Yaoyi and the others. Bai Yaoyi and her two companions were calm and composed, while the monk and old man furrowed their brows slightly, a look of surprise flashing through their eyes. Apparently, the appearance of so many people here was far beyond the expectations of those two. I didn't expect to see fellow Taoists in emblem robes. The monk couldn't help but ask, "Master, there is no need to be surprised. These are all elders of my palace. To enter the mystic jade grotto within the void spirit hall, we must have their help, and only by borrowing the extreme cold energy of the grotto can I break through my bottleneck and increase my chances of success." Hanli turned his head slightly and gave a small smile. The monk of the void spirit hall was silently taken aback. Upon hearing this, Lao Yu's eyes flashed with a brilliant golden light. Even Hanli's expression shifted. "Fellow cultivators, You must have all seen them from the outside. The three void spirit halls in the middle of the secret realm, although they share the same name, each holds its own mysteries. The mystic jade grotto is located within one of them. Furthermore, the true entrances to the void spirit halls are not the main gates of the three halls you see outside. Instead, each has a secret passage that leads directly underground. The middle-aged man in green robes also said with a smile. Hanli had already taken notice of this man in green. Although Venerable Hanli hadn't introduced him, he knew the other party was from the ZG Palace, a cultivator who practiced a different path. It was just that, although this person looked ordinary, his gaze was somewhat gloomy, which made Hanli pay a bit more attention to him at that moment. Having already waited for a long time, Bai Yaoyi and the other cultivators also came forward. Great Elder, have you really decided to open the Void Spirit Hall? Isn't this somewhat against the rules? For generations, our ZG Palace has only opened the Void Spirit Hall when the palace is facing a great disaster and is unable to repel its enemies. Furthermore, allowing an outside cultivator to enter the Mystic Jade Grotto this time is something completely unprecedented. That gray-haired elder, who had a large green mole on his cheek, also bowed to Venerable Hanli, but his tone was defiant and unruly. Hanli was stunned when he heard this. A mid-Nascent Soul stage cultivator. How dare he be so disrespectful to Venerable Hanli? After all, the difference in their cultivation levels was far too great. It wasn't just Hanli. Old Manu and the monk also showed looks of surprise. Elder Yi, you're overthinking things. Although the Void Spirit Hall is generally unsealed only in times of crisis, our ancestors never said that it absolutely cannot be used during normal times. We've already received news from disciples outside the palace. Hordes of demons are already closing in on our island. Opening the Void Spirit Hall a little early is perfectly reasonable. Besides, it's not like we're opening all three Void Spirit Halls at once. As the Great Elder, am I not allowed to make such a small decision? The Great Elder said slowly. It seemed he had long expected the gray-haired elder to object, so his expression showed no surprise at all. Even so, the Void Spirit Hall, a forbidden area of this palace, for these three Taoist friends from outside the palace to enter it, is still highly inappropriate. As the supervising elder, I will not agree to this. The gray-haired elder's gaze swept over Hanli's group of three, not yielding in the slightest. Hearing such discourteous words, Hanli and the others couldn't help but frown secretly. Old Manu even let out a cold snort directly, his face filled with displeasure. Junior Brother Yi, you are in charge of the supervising spirit treasure. You indeed have the right to object to my decision. However, if I can secure the approval of over 2/3 of the remaining elders, your objection, Junior Brother Yi, will be invalid. The Great Elder's expression didn't change as he spoke calmly, but Hanli, paying close attention, noticed that when he mentioned the supervising spirit treasure, this great cultivator of the late Nascent Soul stage actually had a slight twitch in the corner of his eye, as if he was somewhat apprehensive. Hanli was also startled. The supervising spirit treasure, could it be a heavenly spirit treasure, or perhaps a replica of one? If that's the case, a mid-Nascent Soul stage cultivator, he indeed has the ability to contend with a late-stage cultivator, and this gray-haired elder. It seems he represents another faction within the ZG Palace, one that can faintly contend with Senior Hanli. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to be so defiant. But now, hearing Senior Hanli's words, the elder's expression changed. He suddenly turned his head to look at the fellow disciples behind him. Among them were several people, whose gazes shifted, not daring to meet his directly. The gray-haired elder's heart sank. I was wondering why Junior Brother Jin and the others were all dispatched outside. It turns out Senior Brother Hanli planned this long ago. Since that's the case, this elder won't be the bad guy. I hope Senior Brother truly succeeds in breaking through his bottleneck. I'll go patrol above first, just in case those demonic creatures exploit any openings. The elder looked a bit grim, but still managed to maintain a sliver of composure. With a move of his body, he strode out of the hall. Senior Hanli made no attempt to stop him, merely watching him with an indifferent gaze. As he disappeared alone at the entrance, Junior Brothers, prepare to open the seal. The green-robed middle-aged man said to the other cultivators without further hesitation. Instantly, among these ZG Palace elders, no one had any further objections. One by one, from their persons, they each took out a jade pendant of a similar style, and then cast them into midair. They emitted spiritual glows of various colors, He was taken aback for a moment upon seeing these jade pendants, but he quickly acted as if nothing was wrong. These artifacts were actually the same as the one Senior Hanli had given him and then taken back. He glanced sideways at Senior Hanli, but didn't see him take out that jade pendant. And at that moment, led by the green-robed middle-aged man, waves of incantations came from the mouths of the cultivators. Immediately, those jade pendants began to glow brightly, turned into spheres of light, some large and some small. Propelled by the incantation, these spheres of light shot towards the same point high in the sky. They then merged, began to stretch, and change shape, actually conjuring a five-colored light figure of a woman. This woman had a slender figure. Her face was indistinct, but her eyes shone brightly, as clear and brilliant as the stars in the heavens. They were truly unforgettable, and upon seeing this light figure appear, all the cultivators of the ZG Temple, including Great Master Hanli, gave a slight bow to the light figure, their faces filled with solemn reverence. Seeing this, Hanli and his two companions understood immediately. This conjured woman was most likely the ancient cultivator who founded the ZG Temple long ago. Otherwise, why would a mere illusion command such reverence from all the cultivators? But the fact that she was a female cultivator greatly surprised Hanli. He couldn't help but wonder what connection this woman had with the Sutia Palace in the chaotic Star Sea. What was their history? If someone claimed there was no connection between the two, he certainly wouldn't believe it. The similarity between the Suling Palace and the Sutia Palace, as well as the appearance of the Qianlin banquet, couldn't all possibly be mere coincidences. While Hanli was lost in thought, the female light figure, urged on by the cultivators, flew slowly towards the stone gate. Then, without hesitation, the light figure burst apart the moment it touched the stone gate. Spiritual lights of various colors flashed across the stone gate and then vanished. The runic glow on the giant stone gates began to fade, and in the blink of an eye, it became plain and simple. The gate no longer contained a trace of spiritual energy. Just then, a sudden series of cracking sounds echoed from the empty space above the stone gate. Numerous jade pendants suddenly appeared and fell down, all of their spiritual essence gone. The cultivators all raised their hands and quickly retrieved their jade pendants back into their hands. A smile appeared on Hanli Shengren's kind face. He immediately stepped forward and with both sleeves gently brushed against the stone gate. A surge of blue mist swept out, landing on the stone gate like a gentle breeze. The stone gate, as if it were made of paper, silently split in two and opened inwards. Before everyone had a chance to look closely inside, Hanli Shengren's figure suddenly flickered and retreated to a distance. At the same time, he shouted a grave warning. "Junior brothers, be careful." Just as Hanli was trying to understand what was happening, from within the stone gate came a world-shaking boom. It sounded as if countless beasts were roaring at once, as a vast, white, icy wind surged out from inside. Wherever it passed, ice spread, and the ground glistened with a silvery frost. At the same time, the sound of thunder rumbled from within the cold air. The cultivators were shocked. Those with weaker cultivation bases hastily retreated, keeping a safe distance. Those with higher cultivation either released a protective light to resist, or summoned their defensive magic artifacts. In an instant, the white, icy wind had swept through the entire hall. A layer of Zilwoji fire appeared on Hanli Shengren's body. He remained motionless, letting the icy wind blow past him. The moment the white wind touched the Xian, it strangely merged into it, and vanished without a trace. At the same time, Hanli Shengren cast a sidelong glance, and saw that the entire hall had turned into a frozen wasteland. But the other few cultivators who possessed a Han Yan were also completely unharmed. Aside from the white ice shield released by Bai Mengxian, a small cauldron hovered in front of Hanli Shengren. From it erupted a stream of pale blue ice flames, protecting him within. The middle-aged man in green robes held up a layer of black ice flames, which formed a protective shield, with his hands clasped behind his back. Meanwhile, a yellow cane had somehow appeared. An old man used hand. From one end of the cane, clouds of yellow smoke sprayed out, and he hid himself behind it. The gray-robed monk clasped his hands together, and a stream of pale green light shot out from them, transforming into a green serpent that coiled around his body. With a flicker of green light, it blocked the frigid wind. As for Bai Yao Yi and the other cultivators with slightly higher cultivation levels, although they also had abilities to resist the cold wind, the protective light from their artifacts flickered incessantly in the wind, and it was clear they were struggling greatly. In the blink of an eye, The roaring from within the stone gate abruptly stopped. The frigid wind gradually subsided along with it, dissipating and vanishing. The entire hall suddenly fell silent. Han Li's eyes flickered. He formed a hand seal with one hand, and after the purple mist around him shimmered a few times, it was absorbed back into his body. He then looked towards the area behind the stone gate. He saw that behind the gate was a vast expanse of silvery white, with countless, densely packed, towering ice pillars, standing tall within it. It was like a labyrinth in chamber. A thought crossed Han Li's mind, and he immediately extended his spiritual sense to probe it. But shortly after entering the stone gate, his spiritual sense became sluggish and unresponsive. As expected, a special spiritual restriction had been placed inside. Old Manu and the others had, of course, also noticed the situation behind the stone gate. Each of them wore a different expression. Fellow Taoists, be careful. This is also my first time entering this void spirit hall. Although I can control most of the major restrictions inside, there are still some that I am not familiar with. Everyone, follow me closely and do not stray from the path, lest you trigger some other restriction. Master He-Emi, I let out a long breath, then turned and spoke gravely to Han Li and the others. Of course, why would we wander recklessly in your palace's forbidden grounds? Oljin noticed Reverend Han Li's concern, and replied faintly. Han Li and the monk in the gray robe both agreed. Seeing this, Reverend Han Li nodded in satisfaction. He then instructed by Yao Yi and the other elders of the Minor Relief Palace. While I break through the bottleneck this time, it will take 3 to 5 days at the earliest, and longer at the latest. If those demonic creatures attack our palace during this period, you are to handle it according to the original plan. If there are other changes, and I still have not come out after 2 months, you are to proceed according to the backup plan as well. Yes, Great Elder. Zunshu's face was solemn, as he stood up and replied.